Hey everyone, thanks for joining us today on Twitter Spaces for our monthly wrap up with Greg. I'm Nadia Bajuelo, Community Events Manager here at Overclock Labs. I hope everyone here now and listening later is having a nice morning, afternoon, evening, wherever it is that you're joining for us. Let's dive right into today's spaces. First, Greg will take it away for updates. After updates, we'll give you guys a full introduction to our guest today, Head of Product, Anil Murty. I'll be asking Anil a little bit about IP Leases, what it is, and why we're building it. We'll kick it back to Greg, who'll chat with Anil about when people can expect to use it and where we're at with releasing IP Leases. During updates, since we're at the end of the month, Greg will be running through the latest updates on what's going on here at Akash, including some news on the Akash community support for Near Protocol's Stake Wars. He'll continue with a look back at highlights and milestones in July. And as always, we'll wrap things up with AMA time with Greg and our guest, Anil. We'll talk to Anil just after updates, but right now, let's hand it off to the man of the hour and CEO of Overclock Labs, Greg Osuri. Take it away, Greg.
Thanks so much, Nadia. Really good to be here. I love these community calls. We've been doing this for a little over a month, regularly every Wednesday, and absolutely enjoy connecting with the community, taking the questions, being available, and preparing for this call is a great way for me and my team also to review our accomplishments over the week, over the month, over the quarter, and this this past week we saw quite a bit of interesting use cases. Um, and we saw folks like Pablo who are participating in different incentivized testnets using Akash and gaining a massive advantage. So incentivized testnets are essentially testnets run by different protocols to help them test various usually new software that's going to be coming out before they go to mainnet. And usually these test nets are for participants, they're expensive because you have to either go on the classic cloud, which is Amazon, Google's, and Microsoft's, and tend to end up spending quite a bit of money because these nodes are not cheap. So people are discovering that Akash is a very viable alternative to run validators in a significantly cost optimized manner. So people are slowly starting to realize and they're taking advantage of it. And this is a great way to introduce new software like Akash to new ecosystems like Near Protocol, because like we discussed before, the earlier you are in terms of life cycle, the validator developer life cycle, the better and the higher chances of adoption, right? So folks discovering that, hey, Akash can run in test environment in a viable manner. And again, I like these testnets because they tend to uh, push the boundaries, right? Because the whole point of testnet is to be able to test different adversarial conditions to different failure conditions to different attack vectors for a network. So I love Akash to be tested at that level that you don't normally get in production systems. So this is overall a great sign, just from a community to ensure that has heavy presence in these incentivized testnets. We also saw other incentivized testnet like Quicksilver, uh, where Pablo Dia can't spell his last name. He actually got a bunch of rewards, participating in this test, and he spent about $4 per deployment, and his rewards were something in 1,600 Quicksilver tokens. I am pretty sure they're worth more than $4. So he's actually making money running testnets on Akash, and I think that's a good pattern. If you see any incentivized testnet, you should definitely try to run a Akash node because it could actually end up making money. And this is a great time, right? We love bear markets. We saw, if you remember, Akash incentivized testnet we introduced in 2 years, 2.5 years ago. And a lot of the folks that participated in the test net ended up getting a ton of tokens, and it was great for us because we were able to recruit a lot of validators to our community and recruit a lot of community members, and rightfully so. Some of those participants, were rewarded heavily for their testing and helping Akash secure, right? So highly encourage folks to go check it out. Bear markets are great for these kind of incentivized activities, and using Akash is great for you. It's great for your pocket. So it's a match made in heaven. Do go check it out. Akash has been listed now in Sienna Network. Sienna is a privacy-focused DeFi network built on Secret. This is a wrapped AKT. I think it's SAKT. That's what they're calling it. So it's pretty cool to see Akash penetration more in the Secret ecosystem. And looking back for the month, right? So we welcome quite a bit of new ecosystem partners. By the way, if you haven't checked out, go check it out, ecosystem.akash network. We also updated our website to reflect some of the new projects that we've been welcoming. So so in this last month, we did Spark IBC, decentralized web services, Cosmos Validator, who's running a Node as well as a provider, Alter DApp, IBC NFTs, the blockless and Swift chain to the Akash ecosystem. And we recorded all these in ecosystem or Akash network. I also did a survey recently asking community if what they would prefer to communicate these different projects coming on board to Akash because there's a lot that happens, right? So overwhelmingly, people wanted us to make news out of every adoption. So we had, I think, over 480 or close to 500 votes, and 70% of them said yes, we should make news out of every adoption. So we'll try and do that. We have quite a lot of news then, coming up. Yep. And last month was really good too. Sorry, this month we celebrated our peak resource usage. At one point, Akash was registering about 11 terabytes of memory actively leased, right? That's quite a feat. That's quite a validation. I mean, of course, this peak usage doesn't usually stay. Akash being an early product, we have very volatile usage, and that's natural, very organic. But when we see like peak usages like 11 terabytes being used, really tests the system to its limits and really gives an amazing conviction for us, right? Yes, this system is being used, and the growth generally, if you draw a curve, resource usage is generally on uptrend, which is a really good sign. And we also saw good product market fit with utilization rates up to 29%, right? So memory usage at one point was at 29%. And we see that's very healthy. Compare that usage to networks like Filecoin, which has 0.07% utilization, right? So that indicates there's too much supply and there's less demand. At 29% usage is a very healthy indication that Akash has a healthy product market fit, and then we're actually improving in the product market fit. It's not really how much resources you have that matters. It's really how much resources that are in the marketplace and are cleared, right? Inventory. How much inventory do you have left is what matters, right? Ideally, you want 100% utilization. 100% of the inventory that comes to the market should be sold. That's an ideal market conditions, but we all know that's next to impossible. Even the best marketplaces don't have that level of utilization. So seeing a 29% utilization is a very strong indication that Akash's product market fit is strengthening and going better, and all this without any external incentives, right? We discussed about like, hey, incentivized token models are great if you want to bootstrap, but at some point, if you have too many incentives pre-product market fit, you end up having a scenario where you have overwhelming resources that are listed and very little usage, right? Like we see that Filecoin. I mean, nothing wrong with Filecoin. I just feel like the over incentivization of node power um, like puts them in a very interesting position because all the incentives will be gone by the time they get product market fit, right? So and then you're struggling to incentivize suppliers. So hopefully, because tokens don't last forever and tokens usually need a cap, or else you end up in a terror-like situation, right? So incentivizing post-product market fit has been a thesis for Akash, and it's really good to see strong product market fit signaling before the incentives kick in because that'll allow us to grow faster and grow quickly. And Praetor, and overall, I think our ecosystem has been very, very active, right? So Praetor announced support. We announced support for persistent storage, and soon after Praetor, which makes Akash being becoming an Akash provider very, very straightforward and simple, announced their support for persistent storage. Now we're seeing enormous amount of persistent storage on the network, right? And similarly, we announced our IP leases that are code complete, are in testing, and deployed to EdgeNet. And we saw Akash Lytics implement IP leases functionality in their EdgeNet, right? We see this level of our ecosystem partners being ready to launch with us, being code ready. I mean, we're talking about features that are not well documented, but still, that wouldn't stop our ecosystem partners to go and implement these features and show them off to our user base. And that's a really great indication, right? So that's really what decentralization is all about. It's not one company doing it. It's these people coming together, all excited about the decentralized future and building towards it. And and also, this month we saw a great article from Osuri indicating that Akash is a really good, viable option post Ethereum merge when you have enormous amounts of GPUs available on the network. And that's been a big dream for us. We're working very hard to get GPUs out as quick as possible. And it's post merge, you're going to have $19 trillion of GPU capacity that Ethereum network in itself, attracted, right? So this $19 billion, my bad. So $19 billion of GPUs available means it's going to we should be able to be in a good position to leverage those GPUs onto Akash network, thereby reducing the GPU cost on the cloud significantly. So we can't really wait for the ETH merge to happen, and we'll have the GPU capability by then. So it's really exciting. Exciting to see our supply is already almost all bootstrapped right here. Um, Akash also saw an enormous IBC volume. Akash has the highest IBC volume, interchain blockchain communication volume for a non-financial Web3 application, right? So every other application above Akash that had higher volume is DeFi for the most part, and maybe an NFT. But Akash definitely was the number one. Actually, no NFTs, all DeFi, right? Or layer ones that are hosting this DeFi. So seeing an amazing volume for Akash is a great sign. And that's also very important for us during this bear market to work towards a brand for Web3. So far, it's been DeFi, and DeFi led to C DeFi, which led to a collapse of our industry, right? Voyager to all these products, Celsius and whatnot, are just even though they're not DeFi, they're centralized products leveraging decentralized finance, are starting to uh, invite bad regulation, I call it, right? So regulation is already a struggle for a lot of our projects. Now we have the collapse of these massive institutionals that are dubbed as DeFi, but that really are not, and attracting bad regulation. So it's very important for us as an industry to showcase the technologies that go beyond finance, right? Finance is fun, but it's not very attractive to a lot of folks. If you talk to a lot of the Web2 engineers, they don't really care about finance. For them, something like cloud, something more deeply technical and deeply useful for their daily lives is what matters. And it's very important for us to decouple finance from Web3 technologies and showcase these technologies like Akash and like storage technologies, like infrastructure technologies such as LivePeer and whatnot. So it's good to see that level of IBC volume for Akash. And from a feature standpoint, interchain account support is almost code ready. It's currently in review. It's on our GitHub. So go check out the pull request and you'll get an idea where we are. So I'm really excited for interchain accounts because this allows for significantly better interoperability with networks such as Juno or Secret. And with by enabling interchain accounts, an application on Juno can deploy directly on Akash using a Juno account and not an Akash account. And that's very, very amazing, right? So a Juno account can technically sign packets on Akash, and sign transactions on Akash. And we can do an auto swap using Juno Swap. So now you're going to see DAOs and whatnot, members of DAO directly deploying onto Akash using a smart contract from Juno, which is nothing like we ever saw in Ethereum. These are the kind of use cases that are going to showcase Cosmos and the power of Cosmos to the rest of the Web3 ecosystem. I'm really excited for interchain accounts to come out. And Jake Hartnell from Juno has been in a big driver for us to get this interchain account. So hats off to him. I'm really excited to collaborate with their team. And Akash has been receiving quite a lot of love, and we love community, and you can see people. There's overwhelming support by our community. community. The websites running on Akash, showcasing that they are powered by Akash, and this is very important because more people see this, and the more people get conviction that Akash is being used widely, at least in the Web3 ecosystem. So please encourage folks to put the logo powered by Akash and tag them powered by Akash with the hashtag. So and it'll help us a lot. And with that, before we leave, we do have quite updates from our team. As you know, we're hiring a lot, and I'm very excited to announce that we hired around 8 people this month alone. We made offers, 4 full-time and 4 contractors. Nevertheless, 8 new people are joining Overclock Labs, and that's a great achievement from a hiring standpoint. And hiring is one of the hardest things we are to do. We have engineering, we have non-engineering folks, marketing, product marketing, and in business development, and all different areas. We only have 2 positions open. If you remember, we had like 7 positions open before. Now we're able to close most of them. So we still have 2 key positions. One being a senior software engineer. This is a staff level engineer, or L6 or L7 from a Google standpoint. So, and this is a very hard role to fill because the seniority, almost all good people working in this at this level are happily employed, you know, happily earning a massive paychecks. So it's very hard for them to move to Web3, but we're trying our best. And our next big priority hire is VP of Marketing. And that's also a very, very important, very hard hire. It's not someone who does some marketing in crypto. It's someone that understands developer marketing in and out, right? And that's a very, very hard role to fill. So we still have those 2 jobs open. With that, I conclude my weekly and monthly wrap up. And it's been quite an exciting month, and let's make sure that August is even more exciting than July.
Thanks, Greg. Yeah, it's been a great month for sure. Definitely looking forward to August. So, joining us today is Anil Murty, Head of Product here at Overclock Labs. Anil is an engineer turned product manager who has a passion for building products that serve deeply technical users. He has worked on products ranging from consumer hardware, enterprise hardware, software, and software as a service, and most recently, cloud native developer and observability tooling. He's based in the beautiful city of Portland, Oregon, in the Pacific Northwest.
Thanks. It's good to be here.
Anil, I have a few questions for you that will help us get a better sense of IP leases and set the stage as we then move into a deeper discussion with Greg. So, to start it off, what is IP leases?
Yeah, so just to sort of keep it super simple, when we build products, we're obviously thinking about features and products that benefit both tenants on Akash as well as the providers. So tenant is somebody that's deploying workloads on Akash's cloud network, and then providers are the people that are hosting resources on the Akash network. And so IP leases kind of fits both of those really well. So put very simply, IP lease is basically an option for a Akash tenant to request a publicly routable IP address for the services that they deploy. So today, if you're deploying on Akash, when you typically deploy a service, you get what's called an HTTP endpoint. So this is typically what's exposed out of the service, and it's what your external users use to connect to your service. While this works for the most part, there are certain instances where services require you to have a fixed IP address and a fixed publicly routable IP address. And so this feature essentially unlocks that capability for tenants. And then on the provider side, the benefit for the providers with IP leases is that most providers typically have a pool of IP addresses that they request from their data center or from any sort of IP broker, and they typically have more IP addresses than they need. So what this allows providers on Akash to do is to be able to offer those IP addresses or those pool of IP addresses to their tenants, and thereby bring more value to the tenants and then be able to monetize this IP space as well. So there's a little bit of it for tenants and as well as for providers.
Thanks, Dan and Neil. Why have we decided to add IP leases onto Akash Network, and how is it important to the evolution of Web3? In short, could you tell us a little bit more about why we're building this?
Awesome. Yeah, that's a great question. And I like the Web3 component to it. So I'll first talk about just generally why this feature is important, right? So we talked about obviously the value it brings to tenants and to providers, but more generally for the growth of Akash and for the growth of the ecosystem itself. There are certain types of ecosystem partners as well as potential use cases out there. Examples might include, things like Solana validators, pre-search nodes, somebody trying to deploy a VPN solution. Many of these types of use cases require that we be able to provide a fixed IP address, and in many cases, a UDP or TCP port that is in the standard port range. So that's the 0 to 1 is 1024 port range. For example, if you're doing a VPN solution, you want to be able to connect to a standard port, right? So in order for those solutions to be able to deploy onto Akash, it was really important for us to be able to offer this fixed IP, right? And so what this does is, number one, it opens up the use of Akash to a lot more use cases and partners and solutions out there that cannot run on Akash today. So it essentially is a growth story there. Um, Outside of that, it also checks essentially if you care about checking boxes against Web2, it checks essentially another box related to Web2 existing Web2 cloud solutions. So if people on this call are familiar with AWS services or Azure services, you may be familiar with the idea of AWS Elastic IP. So think of IP leases as being very similar to Elastic IP. So it's very similar to Elastic IP in the sense that when you get an AWS Elastic IP, you typically get a publicly routable IPv4 address that is assigned to your account, and it's yours until you release it, right? So it's very similar to that in that sense. Where it differs, of course, is that it's not only a benefit for the people that are consuming resources on AWS. In case of Akash, it's also a benefit for the providers. So in our case, the providers get to sort of monetize and make this available as a value service to the tenants as well. So that's where Akash brings an additional value over what you can get from AWS. And so that's kind of the key thing. And so tying this to your question about Web3 and sort of what Greg was touching on before is this is sort of the one of the core values of why Web3 matters beyond DeFi. The whole idea with Web3, at least as I understand it, is to be able to offer products and services to a community of people that want to build their own services on top of it and be able to monetize them, and sort of bring value to people that want to use them, right? And so this is a perfect example of that, where providers can sort of take advantage of the extra IP space that they have and thereby increase the value that they bring to the community.
Yeah, to add to Anil's why Web3, right? So there is this problem that we talk quite a lot about, and there's some solutions that we're working on. The problem is essentially node discoverability, right? So for example, say I run a Solana node, right? And someone else across the country or across the world runs another Solana node. How do these nodes discover each other? I mean, assuming there's no centralized party that's coordinating. Right now, we go to Discord and be like, hey, give me your IP address for your peer list, right? But say there's no Discord, there's no centralized party for coordination. How do we go discover these nodes? So one way to do that is through IP gossip protocols. Like we can go advertise to essentially, traverse the IPv4 map and be like, go check if this port is open, a, a particular port. If that port is open, go try to connect and do a handshake with that port, right? So that way two nodes can discover each other. So that's one of the advantages of having a fixed port type mechanisms that enables node discovery without a centralized party. And that is critical for Web3, right? Because Web3 is a big problem is bootstrapping today. You need to get the first like IP address that you need to like sync your data. You know, needs to sync your data. If everybody has a fixed IP address and fixed port, that becomes easy to discover nodes. So just wanted to add to Web3 use case for IP leases.
Yep,
Awesome. Thanks,
really good
Greg.
point.
So we really value openness, especially when it comes to our community. So I'm actually going to go ahead and hand it back off to Greg, who's going to walk us through and give us a closer look with Anil on where we are today with releasing IP leases. Take it away, guys.
Thank you. So, we are code complete. I mean, I'll have Anil give a detailed update where we are. So at a high level, we are deployed in EdgeNet. It's functioning on a single node. Anil, you want to expand on that?
Yeah, so essentially, just going a little bit under the hood on how all this works, what we implement is essentially a load balancer sitting in front of the nodes that are deployed in a cluster. And then this load balancer, so each of the nodes that is deployed in a cluster has a pool of IP addresses allocated to that specific host. And the job of the load balancer is to ensure that all the pool of IPs that are on each of the hosts is exposed to the services that are connected to them. And when requests come in, assign them to the correct host and make sure, if there's a certain pod, a certain service running in a certain pod that is deployed in a certain node, making sure that the traffic gets routed correctly to that specific node. So that's kind of the super quick description of the implementation on our side, right? So right now we have most of it working. We in fact have, like Greg pointed out earlier, we have a testnet that is deployed, and it's also accessible through Akash Lyrics. So Akash Lyrics folks, thanks for making the code changes on your side to support it. So if you go into Akash Lyrics today and click on the EdgeNet, you should see a version 0.16 RC-4. That is the version to use if you want to test this out. The one thing that we still have to resolve is, as we were testing through this, we found that in certain cases, when there's a multi-node cluster deployed, in some cases the load balancer wasn't doing, or load balancer combined with proxy wasn't doing a good job of routing traffic to the specific node, in cases where there's multiple nodes. And so we're working through that and making sure that that works perfectly before we deploy this completely to the mainnet. And so in terms of timelines, we have a testnet today or an edge net that people can test out, with the caveat that if it's a multi-node testnet, it'll potentially sometimes not return the IP address. But we're working on resolving that and hope to have this available on the mainnet in the next few weeks.
Thank you, Anil. I mean, it's been quite a lot of progress. So there's a small issue, and that we're still trying to resolve. One of these things about decentralized systems is we got to get things perfectly functioning before we can ship. Unlike in Web 2, where you can ship and fix things later. Because unfortunately, once you ship in a decentralized system, it's very hard to update, right? So uh, the one edge case that we are still testing and we are figuring out what the issue is. Please come help us test it. If you see the issue, please report it. Or if you have any insights on like what you might think is a good fix, please also suggest. And beauty is Akash is fully open source, right? And the code is fully out there. So please come help us test it in the testnet. The more thorough we are with the testnet testing, the better for resilient we are. So we're coming very close, and we should have that in production in a fairly quick time. So thank you so much, Anil.
Yep, thanks, Greg. Yeah, that's a really good point. It's to emphasize the part that it's a relatively minor issue. I don't think we have had anybody outside of our company actually report this so far on the testnet. So, and I know there's people that have tried it out and tweeted about it. So, thanks for that as well.
Yeah, more people try it out, more different perspectives we see, right? It's better for
Yep.
stability. Yeah, highly encourage people to go do it. Awesome.
Sweet.
Okay. Do you guys have anything more to add before we open it up for our AMA?
I think that's pretty. So that's pretty comprehensive update on our on IP leases. think you just expect to see that very, very soon.
Perfect. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and kick off the AMA with a question we got in from Telegram while we bring up our first question here in Spaces. I see happy investors back. Welcome back. We're going to go ahead and bring you up. And while we do that, let's take this first question from Telegram. So, Greg, we have a question. The person wrote in, do you plan to implement something so people can buy AKT with a credit card for deployments so that there is no need to go to the exchange?
Yes, absolutely. So one of the things that we did was a key feature we did release as part of the mainnet 3 was authorized spend. Authorized spend allows you to have two separate wallets uh, for deploying on Akash. One wallet that'll pay for the deployment, and another wallet that'll control the deployment. So a big challenge with implementing credit card based deployments, where in ideal world you would just use a credit card, buy a bunch of tokens, and use those tokens to pay for your deployment. Great, Akash is a decentralized cloud. That's normally how people would do in typical cloud. But since we are a cryptographic digital asset, we can't, as a company, Overclock Labs as a company, cannot sell tokens without a KYC procedures. Even with KYC procedures, it's enormous amounts of reporting, it's enormous amount of compliance. For a cloud company, it's just not something in our wheelhouse, and this is too much of a risk for us to take, right? And on top of that, we have to get permission for every state that we operate in, and there's something called blue sky laws. So all 50 states, we need to get, a check, and about 9 federal agencies that have jurisdiction over anything that really deals with money. So unfortunately, in the United States, we've been dealt a terrible hand as a Web3 company. But it is what it is, right? So we cannot legally sell tokens for credit cards on our website. So, uh, uh, but the nuance is like we can sell tokens as long as we're not giving custody of the tokens. Overclock Labs being a company and Akash Network being the network, right? So one can imagine if there's a way where you can still purchase tokens, but you don't get custody of the tokens. That means you cannot transfer money or transfer those tokens to someone else. So with this authorized spend capability, Overclock Labs can maintain a hosted wallet and authorize your wallet, your operating wallet, to deploy on behalf of this hosted wallet and not give you access to those tokens, just allow you to purchase them or liquidate them. And that way you can have the capability by paying, and that way you can purchase these tokens using a credit card. Doesn't really matter. There's no KYC requirements for this, so it'll be extremely smooth experience. You can put that on a auto, what do you call, renewal plan as well. You can do all amazing things that we can do. So in testnet 3, I'm sorry, in mainnet 3, we introduced this capability that we plan on actually building a product around. And one of the most exciting things that we talked about is this web UI that we've been working on. So soon enough, you'll see part of this web UI a credit card based purchase and renewals, and that's going to help our retention incredibly. That's going to help our adoption, our activation credibility. I'm very excited for this feature.
Awesome. With
We also
that,
have one more question. I think somebody pinged me yesterday
oh, go for it.
about in my thread, and they asked if they what our funding situation is for the Overclock team, and do we have enough money? And the answer is yes. We are fortunate to be well capitalized. We raised capital during the bull market, and we are well capitalized to support Akash development for the next 2 to 3 years. Overclock Labs is. And and the follow-up question was, is this still enough? I mean, it's very, very early. I'm like, absolutely. I mean, we are just starting to scratch the surface, right? And we will obviously raise additional funds as we make tangible progress. But it's very important to have at least one cycle's worth of capital, because in crypto, we know this is very cyclical, bear and bull markets. Right now, we're in a bear market. We'll not be able to raise additional capital in the bear market. Nobody's trying to raise capital. This is the time to build. And when bull market comes, we can raise capital, right? So it was very important for us to use the capital that we have accumulated so far to make tangible progress. Tangible progress means adoption and increased usage of resources. And that's exactly what we're doing, right? So we have another few years to continue on our progress and get better adoption and puts us in a better position to raise additional capital.
Happy investor, we're so happy to see you again. Go ahead with your question.
Hey, great to be back. Hi, Greg. I haven't looked at all at Filecoin and Arweave, but it seems they offer a pretty similar service to what you are offering. I would like to know, please, what is the difference between Akash and Filecoin and Arweave? Thank you.
Good question. So it's not the similar service, it's actually separate services, right? So a cloud application needs computing to process, storage to store data, and read data that to process the data, routing to send the data to the customers or the users, and a whole lot of services a modern cloud application requires. So RV, Filecoin, Saya, Storage are storage services. That means you can store data and retrieve data. They don't do anything beyond that, right? Um, so if additionally they can push a little bit if you have only static data, like if you have like just non-dynamic web pages, you can host them on RV, but nothing dynamic in nature. That means you cannot use a API or you cannot do anything like a WordPress, for example, right? Whereas Akash is compute. We do not do storage. We have storage capability, but that's limited uh, uh, to the lease of the application, right? So it's inherently not redundant, and that's by design, right? So it's not something, Akash, you would use storage just for processing that application, but the expectation is once you're done with the application, the storage goes away. So, for example, even with persistent storage, the storage persists across different restarts, but it's not permanent, right? So, a scenario for Akash would be if you were to host a database or like a a WordPress application, as simple as WordPress application, you would have two containers on Akash. One container is the WordPress PHP and Apache stack. Another one is a MySQL stack, right? MySQL is your database. And you have to regularly back that MySQL up to a storage solution like RView. So when you offload, that means if you're done with the lease and you shut down your application, your data is still available to you. Then you can, boot your application up with the data that you backed up, and so you don't lose data. So you got to use Filecoin RV and these storage solutions in tandem with a compute solutions for a complete web application.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Awesome. While we see if anybody else has any questions or any others are sent in on Twitter, Greg, a bit of a non-technical question for you. I've seen you and Lex Avellino of Passage 3D going back and forth on Twitter. Are we going to see Greg and Lex on an Elden Ring live stream?
I might have overcommitted to that. Install a game, and I miserably failed after 5 minutes of trying, and unfortunately had to be pulled for other things. It's also I also run a company. um, I did give it a try, you know, and it's a difficult game, so I'm not fully sure on my time commitment requirements in order for me to get good at this game. But I have to give something up in life in order to accommodate this game. I'm trying to decide between giving up my girlfriend or my dog. So I can't quite make the decision yet. So it's up in the air yet. So let me see. Let me see what I can do.
So Greg will get back to us on that. Oh man. All right. Does anybody have any tips for Greg or any other questions before we close it out for today? All right. With that, I want to say thank you so much to Anil and Greg for joining us on Spaces today, and also give you guys a huge thank you for joining today or listening to this later. Right now, please be sure to join us on Friday on Telegram. Check out our announcements on Telegram to learn more about what we'll be doing there. Join us next Wednesday at 8 a.m. Pacific for our next Akash Weekly Spaces with Greg. Tap that set reminder button as soon as we post it. If you have an idea for a project on Akash, join our grant program. Watch Alani tell you more on our YouTube channel. The vids that he's put together pack a lot of info in a convenient bite-sized link. And with that, thank you so much for joining today's event. Thanks again to Greg and Anil for filling us in on the latest. See you guys next Wednesday with Greg at 8 a.m. Pacific.
Thanks so much, guys.
Thanks, everyone.